The reinforced steel door clanged shut, the sound echoing through the sterile, concrete hallways of the underground facility before abruptly dying out. It was a heavy, final sound, sealing Dr. Elias Thorne miles beneath the surface. He was the caretaker, the sole guardian of Substation Delta, a bunker designed to house the remnants of humanity should the unthinkable occur. But for now, he was entirely alone, embarking on a standard 6-month rotation. At first, the isolation was a welcomed respite. Elias was a man who appreciated the quiet, an introvert who found the chaotic noise of the modern world exhausting. The bunker was equipped with everything he could possibly need: a library of digitized books, a state-of-the-art hydroponics bay, and endless rows of non-perishable rations. His days fell into a predictable, comforting rhythm. Wake up, check the life support systems, tend to the plants, read, sleep. It was a monotonous cycle, but it was safe. But safety, he would soon learn, was a relative concept. The change began imperceptibly, in the 3rd week of his solitary confinement. It started with the silence. In the absence of wind, of traffic, of human voices, the silence in the bunker was absolute. It was a heavy, physical thing, pressing against his eardrums. He began to hear the hum of the ventilation system, a low, constant drone that seemed to vibrate in his teeth. Then, he heard the creak of the concrete settling under the immense weight of the earth above. Elias tried to ignore it. He played classical music through the intercom system, filling the empty corridors with the soaring melodies of Beethoven and Mozart. But the music only seemed to highlight the vastness of the space, the sheer emptiness that surrounded him. By the 5th week, the whispers began. He was in the hydroponics bay, meticulously pruning a row of pale, struggling tomato plants when he first heard it. A soft, indistinct murmur, barely audible over the hum of the water pumps. He froze, the shears slipping from his fingers to clatter against the metal grating floor. He strained his ears, his heart hammering against his ribs. Nothing, just the water, just the pumps. "Hello," he called out, his voice sounding thin and reedy in the damp air. Silence. He brushed it off as a trick of the mind, a symptom of sensory deprivation. He had read about this in his training manuals. The human brain, starved of external stimuli, would invent its own. Auditory hallucinations were common, expected even. He documented the incident in his log, a detached clinical observation. Day 35. Mild auditory hallucination in Sector 4, likely stress-induced. Will monitor. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew more frequent, more insistent. They would slither from the air vents, echo down the long, dimly lit corridors. Sometimes they sounded like a crowd of people talking in the distance, a low, indistinct hum of conversation. Other times it was a single voice, hushed and urgent, speaking just out of earshot. Elias began to lose sleep. He would lie awake in his small, utilitarian bunk, staring at the concrete ceiling, listening. He tried wearing earplugs, but the silence only amplified the sounds inside his own head, the rush of blood in his ears, the frantic beating of his heart. He started to obsess over the security feeds. He would sit for hours in the control room, his eyes glued to the bank of monitors, watching the empty corridors, the unmoving blast doors. He was looking for something, anything, to explain the voices, but the cameras showed only stillness. The bunker, once a sanctuary, was becoming a tomb. The days bled into weeks, and the weeks lost their meaning. Elias found himself wandering the corridors at what he assumed was night, the stark fluorescent strips having switched to the dim red glow of the night cycle. The red light cast long, demonic shadows across the concrete, making the bunker look like the belly of some massive, mechanical beast. He began to document his deterioration, a twisted scientific experiment with himself as the subject. He would record videos on the terminal in his quarters, watching his own face morph from a calm, collected professional to a wild-eyed captive. Log entry, "I don't know the day," he muttered into the camera during one such recording, his voice hoarse from disuse. "The whispers are getting more complex. They aren't just mocking me anymore. They are telling me secrets about this place." He leaned closer to the lens, his eyes wide and bloodshot. "Did you know the concrete in Sector 2 is porous? They tell me it breathes. They tell me the earth around us is trying to crush us, slowly, patiently. It hates us for carving out a hollow in its flesh. He spent hours meticulously mapping the sounds. He created a chart on the wall of his cabin, using a piece of charcoal he found in the filtration supplies. He drew intricate lines connecting the origin points of the sounds. A rattle in the pipes here, a scrape against the hull there. To a sane mind, it was the normal settling of a massive underground structure. To Elias, it was a deliberate, coordinated language. He stopped eating the scheduled rations. He convinced himself that the food was tainted, that the automated dispensers were lacing the meals with a subtle neurotoxin designed to make him pliable. He lived off the emergency nutrient paste, a foul-tasting slurry that he choked down only when the hunger cramps became unbearable. His physical health rapidly declined. He lost weight, his clothes hanging off his gaunt frame. His skin took on a pallid, grayish hue deprived of natural light for so long. But his mind was terrifyingly active, spinning elaborate webs of paranoia and delusion. He started setting traps. He rigged empty cans to string across the corridors, primitive alarms to warn him of whatever he thought was coming. He slept with a heavy wrench under his pillow, his hand clamped tightly around the cold metal grip. Every time a can rattled, every time the ventilation system stuttered, he would bolt upright, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs, ready to face the invisible intruders. But the intruders never came. The traps remained unsprung, save for when he forgot them and tripped over his own paranoid creations. The enemy wasn't out there in the bunker. It was locked inside his own skull, slowly devouring him from the inside out. In the second month, the whispers coalesced into words. He was in the mess hall, eating a tasteless meal of rehydrated beef stew, when the voice spoke clearly, distinctly, right behind his left ear. "They left you." Elias whirled around, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. The room was empty. The stainless steel tables gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. "Who's there?" he demanded, grabbing a heavy metal serving spoon from the counter. His hands were shaking. "You are forgotten." The voice was cold, devoid of emotion, yet it resonated with an undeniable authority. It wasn't an external sound. It seemed to originate from within his own mind, a sinister echo in the cavernous space of his consciousness. Elias ran to the control room, his boots pounding against the floorline. He pulled up the external communication logs. Nothing. No messages in, no messages out. The connection to the surface was completely dead, as it was supposed to be during a rotation, save for emergency protocols. He initiated a system diagnostic. Everything was green. Life support, power, structural integrity, all functioning nominally. But Elias was not functioning nominally. The psychological toll of the isolation was accelerating. The boundary between his internal thoughts and external reality was blurring. He began to have waking nightmares. He would see shadows moving in the periphery of his vision, shapes that darted out of sight when he turned to look. The air in the bunker felt thick, oppressive, as if it were slowly being sucked out of the room. He stopped tending to the hydroponics bay. The plants withered and died, their brown, brittle stems a stark contrast to the sterile environment. He stopped shaving, stopped bathing. His reflection in the mirror was a stranger's, hollow-eyed, gaunt, a manic edge to his stare. The voice became a constant companion. It taunted him, analyzed his deepest fears and insecurities. "Why did you come down here, Elias? Because you thought you were better than them, or because you knew you couldn't survive up there?" "Shut up," he would mutter to the empty rooms, pacing relentlessly. "Just shut up. You're a coward, hiding in a hole in the ground while the world turns." He began to search the bunker, a frantic, obsessive quest to find the source of the voice. He dismantled air vents, tore open access panels, convinced that there was a hidden speaker, a cruel psychological experiment being conducted by his superiors. His fingertips bled from prying at stubborn metal, but he found nothing, only miles of wire and unyielding concrete. The paranoia consumed him. He became convinced that the bunker itself was malevolent, a sentient entity that was slowly digesting his sanity. The hum of the ventilation system sounded like breathing. The flickering of the fluorescent lights was a deliberate, mocking code. By the 4th month, Elias had completely severed his connection to the passage of time. The digital clocks glowed with meaningless numbers. Day and night were obsolete concepts in the perpetual twilight of the bunker. He retreated to the deepest sector of the facility, the sub-basement where the main power generators were housed. The noise down here was deafening, a relentless, mechanical roar that drowned out the silence. It was a desperate attempt to drown out the voice. He huddled in a corner, clutching his knees to his chest, rocking back and forth. The generators vibrated against his back, a physical assault that he welcomed. It was real. It was tangible. But the voice was louder. "You can't hide from me, Elias. I am you." "No," Elias sobbed, pressing his hands against his ears. "No, you're not real. This is sensory deprivation. It's just a hallucination." "Look around you. This is your reality now. Concrete and steel and endless, crushing darkness." He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to conjure the memory of sunlight, the feeling of wind on his face. But the images were faint, fragile things, easily blown away by the heavy, suffocating atmosphere of the bunker. "The surface is gone, Elias. It burned while you were down here, safe in your little box. You are the last one." The thought struck him with the force of a physical blow. The last one. The sole survivor of a hypothetical apocalypse that he was now convinced had actually happened. The isolation was no longer a temporary assignment. It was an eternal sentence. He scrambled to his feet, a sudden, desperate energy filling him. He ran back to the control room, his breath tearing in his throat. He threw himself into the command chair and activated the external sensors, the ones he had been strictly forbidden to use unless in a declared emergency. He hit the manual override. The screens flickered, then resolved into a chaotic static. "Come on," he begged, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Show me the surface." The static cleared for a fraction of a second. It was enough. He saw a landscape of utter devastation. Blackened, twisted ruins beneath a sky choked with ash. There was no life, no movement, just a silent, irradiated wasteland. Then the screens went black, the external cameras fried by whatever hellish conditions existed above. Elias sat frozen, the image burned into his retinas. The voice had been right. They were gone, all of them. The silence that returned to the control room was profound. It was no longer the silence of emptiness, but the silence of the grave. He slowly stood up, his movements stiff and mechanical. The manic energy had evaporated, replaced by a cold, hollow certainty. There was no rescue. There was no end to the rotation. There was only the bunker. He walked out of the control room, his footsteps echoing softly. He moved with a sense of purpose now. The panic, the fear, the frantic search for answers, it was all gone. He descended the stairs to Sector 4, the hydroponics bay. The dead plants crunched under his boots. He walked past them to the heavy, pressurized door at the far end of the room. The airlock. The manual override sequence was complex, designed to prevent accidental depressurization. But Elias knew it by heart. He had memorized it during his training, a morbid curiosity about the failsafes. His fingers danced across the keypad. Warning, the automated voice intoned, a stark contrast to the whisper in his head. Manual override initiated. Airlock cycling will compromise bunker integrity. "I know," Elias said softly. He pulled the heavy release lever. The hydraulic locks disengaged with a loud hiss. The inner door slid open, revealing the small, cramped space of the airlock chamber. Beyond the outer door was the access tunnel, leading up to the surface. He stepped inside. The voice spoke one last time, a sigh of resignation. "We are finally going home." Elias hit the final switch. The inner door sealed behind him. The outer door, designed to hold back the weight of the earth and the fury of a nuclear blast, began to slowly groan open. The air in the chamber was instantly sucked out, replaced by a rushing, toxic wind. Elias closed his eyes, inhaling deeply, and welcomed the silence. The bunker remained, a concrete tomb buried miles beneath a dead world. Inside, the emergency lights flickered, casting long, wavering shadows across the empty corridors. The ventilation system hummed, a low, constant drone. And in the profound, crushing silence, if one listened closely enough, they might hear the faintest echo of a whisper, trapped forever in the dark.